So, Jimena, thank you for joining us in the Asterusia hybrid course. And we're ready to hear more about this very interesting initiative you wanted to share with us, the market ready model. Can you talk a little bit about it? Who is it
Yeah,
for and how does it work?
of course. Thank you, Iro. Thank you for having me. Um, the market ready model. Well, first of all, I work with an organization that it's called La Mano del Mono, and this organization has objectives of conservation, of strengthening local sustainable livelihoods, and creating or educating change agents for for the future, for all the causes that we need in this world.
Mhm.
And we do this through three main tools or strategies, which are the creation of social business models, nature or ecotourism, and experiential education. And so a lot of our work is focused on tourism. And because of all the experience of the organization throughout the years, a big team of people from different organizations and in different countries came up with the market ready model,
Mhm.
which has the purpose of creating certainty in the nature tourism industry and professionalizing the sector, because something that happens a lot is that there is a huge disconnection between the offer and the market, and in terms of information, in terms of requirements, and there are a lot of like consequences of that, including there's a lot of offer that is not being considered by the market. A lot of community, we work a lot with community enterprises, like rural communities, indigenous communities in throughout Mexico and other countries, and so they have really good nature tourism offer that is not being considered by the market because they don't know about it, or because they don't have what they expect or what they need, or because there's just not good communication around it. But also there is a lot of in Latin America, in some countries of Latin America, there's a lot of government and private investment in this type of tourism initiatives. But because there's not enough information about this sector, those investment initiatives are just like all over the place, and they are not like they're not well, focalized where they're supposed to be. And so there's just like a lot of resources and time and energy and money just being put in places where it shouldn't be because there's not enough information. And so that's also part of what the market ready model is looking to tackle, with creating certainty about this sector and just generating information about the sector. And this is going to make more sense now that I start. There's that sharing my screen and talk a little bit more about it.
Yes, we are
Um,
waiting to see
okay,
how
so
it works exactly.
yes. So yeah, to talk a little bit more about La Mano del Mono, we combine the objectives of conservation, local development, and change agents. So facilitating behavioral changes in visitors, in tourists, to transform them into change agents within their own realities.
Mhm.
So to like switch perspectives, to become allies to conservation. And that is why we design transformative tourism. Um, so it's tourism that not only provides livelihoods to communities that live in natural areas, but also tourism that transforms visitors to gain more and more allies to the cause of conservation and local development. And we do this through nature tourism, experiential education, and creation of social business models with these communities that we work with. And so the market ready model, um, it's an international tool that is aiming to create certainty in these nature tourism destinations, to consolidate local enterprises and professionalize them and connect them to specialized markets. All of these with a bigger aim of strengthening local sustainable livelihoods in communities. This model was first created and implemented in Canada, in British Columbia, with the Winter Olympics of 2010, I think. I'm not completely sure. But yeah, because they wanted to introduce, or they wanted to include the indigenous tourism offer of the province with all the tourism offer that the province has for all the visitors that they were going to get because of the Olympics. But so they realized that they have to have a clear map of what's happening in the indigenous tourism sector, because it's different than the conventional tourism sector in terms of the information that you have about them and all the equipment and preparation and infrastructure and everything that they have about it. So they came up with this model to create certainty for that market. And so we have taken that and sort of what we call tropicalize it and sort of adapted it to Mexico and to other Latin American countries. And so the way the model works is that it's based on 4 profiles. It sort of categorizes enterprises into 4 profiles based on operational, entrepreneurial, commercial, and sustainable criteria. So we have criteria about different stuff, like main points about operations, about the way they manage the enterprise, about the way they communicate and commercialize their products, and about their better practices in terms of social and environmental responsibility. And based on those criteria, it categorizes the enterprise in either startup, visitor ready, market ready, or export ready, depending on how ready they are for different markets. And so the startup doesn't, I mean, it normally sounds like an enterprise that is just beginning, and it's not necessarily the case. Like we know a lot of enterprises that have been operating for 10 or 20 years, but they are in this category because of the way they operate and because of what the way they operate and the equipment and the infrastructure or whatever, like just like the way they do things. And visitor ready, market ready, and export ready also are related to how ready they are to different markets. And so and something we really like to address is that it's not bad to be in one or the other. Like you can be in a startup and that is okay because there is a market for that. What we want is to create certainty for people to know, for people, for tourists, and for what we call commercial allies. So tour operators, agencies, and all of that, to know what you have here and to create those commercial alliances with the most certainty possible. And so once and so by doing this, we believe that the efficiency of investments that I talked about before and coordination between different actors and different stakeholders in a destination becomes more efficient and more focused. It professionalizes these enterprises because we detect opportunity areas for training and for capacity building. And so we also training and capacity building can be more focused and efficient. It encourages best practices in these enterprises because it shows them like a horizon of what it could be, right? So maybe they are in a certain place in certain things because they don't know what else or how to get there, and this also shows them how it could be, how it could improve, and it gives them ideas and encouragement on how to get there. And it can more easily connect specialized markets, like the specialized market with the different offers that are in rural areas that are not very well known. And in general, it just like increases the quality of national and international tourism experiences. Um, and so,
So,
yeah,
your basic clients or customers, let's say, that come and want to apply this model, what are they? Can you give us some practical examples?
yeah. So the one thing is like the beneficiaries of the model are communities, are smaller tourism enterprises, can be or like the people involved can be from different profiles, but the our customers to implement this model are normally governments, like let's say a state government or like a provincial government that wants to work with the whole destination. It's normally destination managers,
Mm-hmm.
which can look like a government, it can look um, an international cooperation agency, it can look uh, like at the moment we are working with both GIZ and the Mexico's National Commission for Protected Areas, because we're working on some regions of Mexico as destinations of sustainable tourism, but based on the protected areas that are in that region. It can look like a foundation as well, a client like a big foundation, like a big company that wants to promote and just implement better tourism in a certain destination.
In this
So that,
sense, it can serve also biosphere reserves from a state, either a
yeah,
single biosphere reserve or the biosphere reserves of a certain country that would like to develop their sites touristically in line with sustainability, right?
absolutely. So it could either be one biosphere reserve that has a destination vision. We have work in some parts of the market ready model in a biosphere reserve in Mexico called El Triunfo, which is in Chiapas, in like the very south of Mexico. Um, but it can also be a certain group of biosphere reserves that can be looked at as a destination, as a
Mhm.
tourism destination. And so, yeah, and so it depends a lot on the vision of managers and who the managers are working with. But yeah, it most definitely it could also work as a like a network of biosphere reserves that are looking to develop a certain type of tourism as a destination and want to sort of standardize the tourism offered from biosphere reserves. That could also be a potential implementation, yeah, scenario. um yeah, and so by create so we implement the way the model is implemented is that we start with a market readiness assessment, which gives the enterprises one of these four profiles. And it's very important to address that it's not a certification or anything like that. It's not like, oh, you're good and you're not so good, and things like that. It's just
A
the
mapping
information
tool.
that exactly you're here,
You
like
can use it to improve uh, your position towards your vision, towards your goal.
exactly. You can it's like it gives you information about where you are, it gives you information about where you could move towards, but it's not saying this is better or worse than the other. It's just saying this is the information that we have about you, because it's about like about a clear mapping of what's out there, right?
But it
And
also gives recommendations of about how to improve your position in the direction that you wish.
yeah, so there are four ways of conducting this assessment. One of them is an online like auto evaluation. So the enterprise comes in and fills in a form, doesn't take very long, but every time they click on an answer they'll get a quick recommendation about something they could be doing. on their own as well. So it doesn't need like consultants and all these kinds of complicated things. Just like, do you not take payment with credit cards or with like bank cards? Then you could be doing this because the market wants that, right? Like it's all based on the market, not like just based on what we thought was a good idea. It's like the market is asking for enterprises to receive cards because they don't want to travel with cash on them. So we recommend that you do this, and so that's a recommendation. There is another sort of level that is more like time consuming and a little bit more complicated, but also provides more certainty about the enterprise, that it's an evidence-based online evaluation. And this means not only you answer, but you provide evidence of everything that you're saying, like insurance policies, certifications, whatever we're asking you about. The next level of certainty would be a mystery tourist evaluation, which means like, let's say the destination managers hire us to do this assessment, and then we send someone, one of our team's consultants, to the enterprises dressed as tourists, and they just like take the service and take the whatever, buy the product they're selling, and assess secretly. And then the most certain and most like time consuming type of evaluation is like a longer 2-day, let's sit down and check everything, and like a more in-depth evaluation. But in every level of this, they are getting recommendations, like right away, to either address this quickly or at least think about it, like
Yeah,
at least plant the seed of there's something else you could be doing.
this is also very important to plant the seed.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they're not doing something because they don't even know that it could
Yeah.
be done, right? And so, yeah, and so and the idea of getting these profiles is to get, again, a more clear idea of the destination, but also detect opportunities of capacity building. Like once we have that, then we can build a capacity building, like a training program around it, and know which of the aspects of like of the commercial, operational, sustainability criteria aspects we should be tackling, or are more important in terms of capacity building. um, and during that, like something that we're doing right now, and I can show you a little example about it, is that we are, as part of one of these training processes, what follows in the process is that you start designing experiences. So once you are building the capacities and the abilities to do it, and then you can start designing experiences with the purpose of um, it being experiences that not only transform the tourists, but also increase the perceived value of the enterprises services and activities, and just like of what they do, increases the perceived value. So it's an experience, and it's a service that provides more quality to the tourist, and hence the tourist is willing to pay more for it. And so,
Do you have an example and an applied example of to share of
yeah,
the applied
yeah,
model?
I will. So for example, there is a success story about this that it's called Experiencias Raramuri. So Raramuri experiences, Raramuri is the indigenous name of this group of people in the Copper Canyon in Chihuahua in northern Mexico. And they are very, very famous worldwide for being amazing runners. They're ridiculously good runners. They go all over the world competing, and they win everywhere because historically they have always run. They run tens and tens of kilometers every day for whatever reason, like for sending messages, for hunting. They can hunt deer by getting them tired. And so, they will just run for days. So raramuri means light feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why the logo is these like two feathers, in the feet. And so Experiencias Raramuri was,
And I see they're all women.
yeah, in this we work with a big group of women in this process. So this was a 2-year long process.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long one. It normally, like a normal case of implementation of market ready is not that long because of many, like issues that occur around this kind of project. But this was a very good example of a really long process during which we were able to start from the market ready assessment all the way towards experience marketing. So
Mm-hmm.
we went through all the
The whole
phases of,
cycle. Yes.
yeah, exactly, and it's not necessarily like linear. We can normally intervene in either one of the stages, but in
Mm.
this case we went all the way from assessing them to designing experience, validating these experiences with the market. So we do this match between the products and the market in order to design experiences that we are almost certain that the market is going to want. So
So,
that's
what
a
did you design as an experience in this project?
okay. For example, what happened in Experiencia Ramuri, and look at this place, it's just like, it's a ridiculously beautiful place
Mm.
in Chihuahua. So they had big challenges because they are located right next to what is called an adventure park that has over 120,000 users per year in a normal year, probably not 2020 because 2020 is a whole different thing.
Let's just
Um,
forget 2020 from our
yeah,
lives.
exactly.
That's just delete
Doesn't
it.
count, especially tourism. It had a lot of tourists. This adventure park, it has like the longest and highest zip line in Latin America, Mexico, the world, I'm not sure. And it
Mm-hmm.
has this beautiful, amazing canyon. It's just like like astonishing landscape and all of that. And it's one of the stops of this really popular um, touristic train route that it's called El Chepe, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like in Chihuahua.
Mm.
And so these communities were there, but they were literally looking at the tourists just go by,
From a,
above
yeah.
them. And they were like, the way they were involved in the tourism was they would go and sell, their like crafts and stuff like that,
Yes.
just like spend a lot of time trying to sell a little bit because they weren't developing much.
Yeah.
But they did have a huge interest in defending their land because they've had a history of having to defend their land against the government or against other people, like private companies that want to buy it, so they wanted to stay there. They didn't want to migrate. They wanted to stay there to defend their land, and they also wanted to defend and rescue their culture. And so, and this is the type of thing they would be there and just like would be selling and
Selling
stay.
in the streets. Yes.
Exactly. And so let's say this little basket that is made of pine leaves,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like dyed in different colors, and they're very beautiful and very, like, it's very fine work. So they would stay there and sell them, and then people would bargain and they'd be like, oh, I'm gonna buy it for 30 pesos, like, and it's not worth 30 pesos, but people don't know, right? And so after this whole process, there were also guides, like hiking guides over there, and as like you can see here in this is a list of all the guides. This
Mm-hmm.
is what they made out of guiding in 2014 and 2015, and the one who made the most money out of guiding made 10,000 pesos, which is like less than 500 euros in the whole year from
Oh la
guiding.
la.
So like
Nothing.
nothing. And so, and they also had a big challenge with water because they don't get rain for like more than half of the year. So they also had like food security, challenges as well.
Mm-hmm.
And and so we started developing Experiencias Raramuri through this model. And the first part is to align or to do this match between the market and the product. And so the way you start doing that is that you build what we call prototypes, right? And so I have a couple examples here of prototypes that we just designed. So a prototype is the idea of an experience. It doesn't have to be developed yet. It doesn't have to exist yet. It's just the idea. So, for example, this one is really nice. It's knitting, like stories with this Matlatzinca community in the state of Mexico. And so you create a description, a very nice description of what people would be living in the experience, right? It would be, you would be getting immersed in the culture, blah, 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 like learn from them and rescue the very last Matlatzinca experiences that exist in the country. And then you give them a little bit of information. Where is it? How long? How many people? Around how much?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a prototype, right?
Yeah.
And in Experiencias Raramuri, we build prototypes for different ideas that came up by the people.
Mm-hmm.
And you validate them with the hotels, the tour agencies, the tour operators, etc. So what happened here, for example, is that you show the preference of the communities for offering something and the preference from the market for
Buy
selling it,
something.
right? And so, for example, this is a very clear example. It's called festivities. So the willingness of the community to sell their festivities is very low. And the market really wants to sell it. So that's a no, right? There's no match
No
there.
match. Yes.
So you're not only gonna go with what the market wants, you have to match that. For example, the market wanted the Raramuris to go to the hotel parking and do a ceremony there. And the Raramuris were like, no, like we're not doing that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big no.
What about another color? Homestay or the purple one?
Homestay,
Homestay. I see.
for example, the experience
Accepted.
of staying at a Raramuri house was very well accepted by the community and decently well accepted by the market.
Yes.
Sharing knowledge about medicinal plants, not so much, right?
Yeah, these are secrets.
Exactly.
Can
Same as
understand.
photographies with families. The
Yeah.
market really wanted people to go and take photographies with the families, and the community was like, nah. But
Yes, let's choose another one.
for example, cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking was very well perceived by the community. Crafts as well, very well perceived. Hiking as well, very well perceived. And those are the three that were,
Chosen
like we
to focus.
explored further because they had a good balance between both sectors. Another part of this is knowing your market. So there were just surveys and stuff to just know where the market that goes there comes from. Because, for example, the Mexican market is not very active physically. The Mexican tourist doesn't really walk that much, typically, like in general.
Neither.
And so that is something you need to know, because if they already were selling these hikes that were 6 hours long, we're like, they're not gonna want, Mexicans don't want to walk that long. And also what people are looking for, right? So consistency, formality, quality, responsibility, good service, like to just get all of that they're looking for, and also how much they're willing to pay. And so a certain percentage was, and that's how you match also how much they're selling their experience for with how much people are willing to pay. And then it turns out most of the time they're willing to pay more.
Exactly.
They're
They're
selling.
underestimating their services and the products in many cases.
Exactly. And once you turn it into an experience, instead of being just a hike, but it becomes an experience, then the willingness to pay just increases in 500% or something like that. And then we had this event with the hotels and the agencies and all of that. Diversify your offer, blah blah blah. Come and meet them, right? And so these prototypes that were only in paper, you put them on stage. Like it doesn't have to be final, it doesn't have to work normally, you just put them on stage one time. For example, the Raramuris had the idea of a museum. And so the place where they thought their museum should be was all the way down in the canyon. And so we're like, this is beautiful, but they're not gonna want to come here. They're not gonna want to walk hours to get here.
Yeah.
So how about we just like test it and put the museum in like the little shop that they had there where they sell Coca-Cola and all of those things, there. Let's just put a few things there and see what the
How it
reaction to
works.
the museum is,
Yes.
right? And now they only have to walk maybe 20 minutes. And so
Mm.
that was a way of seeing it. And the part of this co-design as well was, for example, with the hiking guides, it was harvesting stories, like, why are you guys called light feet? Oh, because we run and blah blah blah. And so harvesting all of those stories, and now we have well, I'm going to show you experiences now. Now we have one of the experiences is called Light Feet Trail.
Mm.
And so it's a trail that lasts 3 hours in which people walk with them, but they tell you all about their story, all about why historically they run so much. They show you their games. They have games as well, what they run. They show you their games, you experience the games, you go and visit these, of course, beautiful, like sceneries and all of that. And you learn about the culture and you learn about why they're called light feet, and it's 3 hours. And then there is another legend of how their grandparents lived along with giants. It's a local story that they have. That was also something that needed to be harvested. And so the other
So,
trail that they develop is called Giants Trail.
so once these experiences are standardized or set up in the format that you present us here, how can a tourist access it there from the community, from the hotel, or how is it known to them once
In
it's
this
there available?
case, because the process went all the way through marketing. So after doing all this validation with the commercial allies and bringing them and living the experience and all of that, and it was decided that these were the 4 experiences that were going to be developed, then you start investing.
Mhm.
So once you start developing this, you start investing. So the investment was in certification for the guides. So they are certified in first aid and in group management, experience design, all of that. So it's an actual experience and not just a trail. Well, something that needs to take into account as well was that not only the Mexican market doesn't walk that much, but also because their main market was people getting off the train, they
Mhm.
only had a few hours to do this kind of thing.
Ah,
So again, because they had experiences that took too long, it was like you have to shorten them if you want to work with that market.
target the
So,
market, yes.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so once these were the experiences that were going to be developed, then the investments begin. And so another of the experiences was Raramuri Kitchen. So they invested in the kitchen, um, and they linked that one with one that is called knitting stories. So people go and learn how to knit their basket, the little basket that I showed you before. And when people start knitting their basket, they realize that it's worth much more than they were willing to pay for before.
Yeah.
Like it's not 30 pesos anymore. It took me a while. This is worth a lot more, right? And so once the investment came, it's because you have certainty that this is gonna work, right? That this is gonna work out. Another part of the process here was creating good practices guidelines with the community
Mm.
towards the tourists. And it's very important because someone's going to set the rules. There's always going to be rules. Someone's going to set them. It has to be the community. Otherwise, the tourists are going to come and they're going to set the rules, right? So this happened in 2 different communities as well. So the 2 trails are in one community called Wetosachi, and the other two are in another community. So for each of the communities, there was a workshop to develop these guidelines. And so the guidelines include, well, here is in English.
In English, yes.
So,
Dear tourist.
yeah, like don't give money to the kids if they come asking. We have
No.
a community fund, donate to that fund, because they do have a community fund, which is amazing because in their price strategy, there is a certain percentage that is aimed always to that fund. So that fund, they use it for healthcare, for fixing their roads, for rainwater harvesting, for different needs that they have. So this is a good way of the community overall accepting the project, because even though only some people are operating it, the whole community is being benefited by tourism. And so yeah, so they came up with these guidelines for tourists, just to make sure that the rules are set from the beginning. And then we included them in different surveys about which experience would you like the most, and they won by far in this platform called Mexico Desconocido. And and so here, okay, so and now you can book on their website. So you can go to experienciasraramuri.com. They have a website in English, and you just go to book
Book the
now.
experience that you want.
Yeah. And so it gives you the information about how to pay, blah, 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 blah. It's the same. Oopsies. So book.
Yes, this last step is very important. Otherwise, the connection is not made.
Exactly.
It has to be available and on the internet, and somehow available to the tourism that wants to get this service. So wonderful. We are in Greece or in another country from the Mediterranean. How could we benefit from this model? How do we come in contact with you, and if we want to know more? With a market-ready model, can it be applied? Has it been applied in? You talked about Canada, some Latin American states.
Yeah, it started in Canada, then it was moved to Mexico. It started being implemented in Latin American countries. Another colleague of ours, another ally of ours that has an organization called Small Planet. They have been implementing this in Jamaica and in Granada, I think, Guyana as well, so in different language situations as well. And this is definitely something that can be replicable. Yeah, and it can work in either very emerging destinations, as well as destinations that have already been working, but
want to develop in another way.
Exactly.
Yes.
To sort of change the course of the way tourism has been.
Yes, rediscover themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, because what you need willingness and interest in tourism. So you can start from zero if there's not even the interest of working with tourism. You need a certain level of organization. Like these were groups that were already organized, not necessarily legally, developed, but at least working organized, because otherwise that's a whole different process.
Yes.
Organizing people, right? And you need to have the support of a local ally, which in this case there is an organization that works with territory defense that was very much involved in this process, and that was the main local ally for this process. So you normally need someone like that to be
as a
involved.
driver. Yes.
Yeah, because otherwise you can't just get there and be like, we're gonna do this, you need that local contact that has to be very much involved. Other than that, I mean, it's replicable for sure with its adaptations as well, It's a living model. So every time it's applied, it changes. Like we can't even try to make it like a cooking recipe because it changes every single time. And if it was applied in like a different culture, although the Mediterranean culture would be the closest to
Closest.
Latin America, right over there. So that would be a good next step.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's adapted every time for sure.
So we will welcome the learners of the e-course to come in contact with you to know more about the model.
Absolutely, yes. Ooh, and I don't have a